One workflow that's truly improved has been our development of cross-curricular projects. We call it academy-based learning, but essentially, those projects between maybe an English and a history teacher, taking learning targets that we've established, and then using ChatGPT or using OpenAI to help develop a lesson plan or a project that can be delivered just by really improving what our input is, because your output is going to be determined by your input. And so if you have quality inputs, you're going to have quality outputs. And so working through our training and really showing our students how to do, our teachers how to do that, that has decreased the amount of time that teachers have used in developing those projects, because they can simply just throw in there a project that is going to focus on these learning targets, that is going to be this long, that's going to include this many students. We really want to focus on development of these skills, putting those in, and then being able to review and modify in order to create something that the teacher really feels good about.
So, welcome to the podcast, listeners. Most people talk about AI as it's something that is coming to K-12 education, but today's guest has already built systems around it. Philip Nowlin, Deputy Superintendent of Academics at School at Agua, Fria, Union High School District in Arizona, leads one of the first districts in the country to formally partner with OpenAI. From launching an innovative high school designed around flexible learning pathways to supervising AI pilots across multiple campuses, he's uniquely positioned to answer questions many districts are still wrestling with. That is, what does responsible AI adoption actually look like at a larger scale? Philip, welcome so much to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here today.
We are really excited for this podcast. So, I'd like to know about your journey a little. So, you started your career as a history teacher and now you lead academics across six high schools. So, what was it that initially drew you into education, and are those motivations still what drive you today?
Yes, I started as a high school teacher, teaching history. My dad was in the military, and so we traveled around the world, and military history was always something that was interesting for me. Come from a long line of individuals that have been in the military. My grandfather served in World War II. My great grandfather served in World War II on my mother's side, and my father served. So through that service, I really kind of received an appreciation of history, military history, and just history in general. And so that was kind of my first taste of maybe something that I want to do. I was also a student athlete. And so one of the things that I experienced as a student was I didn't have a lot of teacher role models that I felt maybe identified with certain things, experiences that I had in my life. And so I thought it was important for me to kind of give back to students and be able to provide them with maybe a resource, maybe someone who has experienced some of the same things that they have growing up. And then just really being able to really, satisfy my thirst and my passion around history, as well as student athletes, and be able to kind of provide that service back to students.
That is an incredible perspective to have, especially when you want to give it back to the students, something that you faced, certain issues that you may have faced at your times. I'm assuming that you want to make sure that they don't feel the same way under your leadership. So that is incredible. You've led in instructions, you've led in HR, athletics, and now AI strategy. What is one through line that connects your leadership styles across all of these roles?
When I look at all the different roles that I've served, the major connector to all of that is how that impacts the student success. And so the student experience or the academic experience for a student is not just a linear path that doesn't have any types of roadblocks or speed bumps that come in the way. And it doesn't just involve what happens in the classroom. It involves what happens in student services, students being involved in athletics and activities. It involves how do we put the right people in front of students so that students are truly successful with passionate educators that are not only skilled but also have developed the passion around building student relationships and helping students navigate life. And so I think that through line that connects my leadership style across all those roles has been what is best for students. How do we ensure that what we're doing is going to lead not only to student success, but also how's it going to lead to developing full successful adults in our society who also can navigate and be successful through the different roads that you have to and paths that you go down as a result of what we call life. So really, I think that's kind of been the consistent piece for me through all of my leadership and all my different roles.
That's incredible for us to know. And with that, I'd like to move on to the topic at hand for today. So that is AI integration. Your school district is one of the first districts to formally partner with OpenAI. What was it that pushed you from AI is interesting to AI needs to be a part of the system strategy right now?
Right, that's a great question. We are excited with our partnership with OpenAI. We have a division or a department that's been created specifically around innovation and AI integration. And so, through our team in that department, we really wanted to look at, what's the future of education. I commonly, whenever I talk to different groups about this subject, I talk about I can remember when the internet really became a major player in what we do in education. When I first started teaching, I was using a paper grade book. Paper and pen, and our grade book was not digitalized. It wasn't on a computer, and so everything that we did was by hand. And so now we're so dependent on the internet, and we're so dependent on technology. But that was something that people pushed back against when it initially became. It felt like, okay, maybe this is going to be cheating, and how are we going to really teach students the skills that they need in the future workforce as a result of this new technology. And it's similar to what we're going through right now. And so as a district, we recognize that AI is not going anywhere. It is automating certain industries and workforce areas today, and will continue to do that in the future. And so, how do we truly prepare our students for that skill set that's necessary for them to be successful? Was the question that we needed to answer, and the answer to that question is how do we embrace AI, and how do we make that a part of our system strategy? So, how do we look at it from two different arms? And so I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that as we kind of go through this segment.
So, walk us through the rollout. I mean, how did you introduce AI to your staff without overwhelming them or intimidating them?
Right, that's a great question. So ultimately, we started small. We started with the AI ambassador group. So Drew Olson, who is our director of AI and innovation, he was passionate about it. He was an early adopter, and so one of the things that we did is just on each campus really put out feelers to say who's interested in this in AI and who's interested in kind of exploring it, learning more about it. And so some of those early adopters, that was voluntary, that was optional. And so that was something that was after school that they would participate kind of in this think tank that met periodically to really discuss AI and share best practices and then really challenge each other to say, okay, here's something that I'm gonna implement in my class just to see how this works with my students. And so that's kind of how we rolled that out to ensure that staff wasn't overwhelmed or intimidated by AI, and then progressively started to look at through the success matrix. Or success metrics, how do we continue to incorporate AI in more functions of our organization? And then how do we utilize those AI ambassadors to really true be ambassadors and go out on their campuses and share with their colleagues about, hey, here's a couple things that you don't have to be afraid of that I've used, and here's some success around that.
So I think it would have made a difference when it came from their peers. So like when teachers heard it from fellow teachers about AI, I think that would have made a little bit of a difference. But I'm really curious to know that were there any teachers at all who were just not ready to accept AI at all? Like they were just saying that AI is cheating, we don't want to use this. So were there any teachers, and if yes, how did you tackle that?
Yes, we did. We had a number of teachers, and I think even still today, we have some teachers that are still apprehensive about
Mm,
utilizing AI. And so, how we address that is one, you have to recognize that fear, or that apprehension, that anxiety around that is real, and so you have to recognize that. You have to appreciate that. You can't make a staff member feel like they're wrong for feeling that way. So that was the first thing: is acknowledging that, accepting that, and saying we know that that's a reality. The second thing was giving them just some basic strategies on how to utilize AI at a very low level. And then we adopted a stoplight system. So our stoplight system, which has been adopted throughout our state in the state of Arizona, but that stoplight system is here's what's red, here's when you shouldn't use AI, here's um, uh, uh, unethical uses of AI. And then here's our yellow. This is where it's appropriate to maybe use it, but a very controlled environment. And here's our green. Here's where these are some of the AI pathways and strategies and best practices that absolutely aren't cheating, that are opportunities for students to use and teachers to use. The other piece is really is helping teachers understand that how we use technology is going to be important,
mm.
and it is the application of the device, of the software, of the resource, and how do we really look at how we're delivering instruction, and how do we use that to help, or how do we use the technology such as AI to help enhance that, to increase engagement, to help students really apply, go to the application level of their learning.
So I think having those clear guardrails or boundaries, I think, could make teachers a little more comfortable if they were not already. So that is incredible. I'd also like to know that many educators fear that AI will replace teachers. So how do you frame AI in a way that protects that human relationship rather than diminishing it?
Right, that's a great question. Um, so obviously, the stoplight system is effective in that, but also we have workforce partners. So we're in the midst of an academy transformation. So our comprehensive high schools are turning into academy structured high schools, which essentially just means we still teach math, science, English, all those things, but we have an emphasis on how do we merge our core content with our CTE pathways and career workforce opportunities for students. Through that, integration of AI is an important component of that. And so, one of the things that we try to use is we use data that is given to us from our workforce partners that really shows the jobs that are going to be automized. So, this is data that is done on a national scale, and it shows that education and teachers is something that will be automized but not replace teachers, because you still need a human to develop relationships with students. You still need a human to navigate those relationships with students. As I said previously, the student experience is not just the acquisition of information. If that was the case, then we could just put students on computers and no teachers in the classroom, and they can just look and search everything on the internet. But teaching them how to think, that critical thinking, teaching them integrity and character, those are things that AI is not necessarily going to teach them. That is something that we need a human to teach them. And that's still a critical piece of delivering education and delivering instruction in a daily classroom. So that's we want to reaffirm with them that no teacher will lose a job as a result of AI, and that human relationships are the priority. And we just want to use AI as just another tool to help us provide instruction at a greater level.
That is a really reassuring sort of a perspective that you're coming from. I really appreciate that. Moving on to my next question. What's one actual workflow that AI has meaningfully improved for teachers or principals in your district?
So, one workflow that's truly improved has been our development of cross-curricular projects. We call it academy-based learning, but essentially, those projects between maybe an English and a history teacher, taking learning targets that we've established, and then using ChatGPT or using OpenAI to help develop a lesson plan or a project that can be delivered just by really improving what our input is, because your output is going to be determined by your input. And so if you have quality inputs, you're going to have quality outputs. And so working through our training and really showing our students how to do, our teachers how to do that, that has decreased the amount of time that teachers have used in developing those projects, because they can simply just throw in there a project that is going to focus on these learning targets, that is going to be this long, that's going to include this many students. We really want to focus on development of these skills, putting those in, and then being able to review and modify in order to create something that the teacher really feels good about. And so our AI ambassadors kind of started that process. And then we've had some teachers and even our curriculum team have a lot of success in really just reducing the amount of time that's used in order to do that.
That is incredible. And following up with that a little, how are you approaching AI? How are you facing student facing AI, especially around safety bias and academic integrity?
Right. That's a great question. I think academic integrity is really critical to address, especially when you're working with teachers. And so we previously talked about teachers having concerns about students cheating, using it for reasons that are not in line with our academic integrity. And so that stoplight one is one process, but also really spending time in lessons with the students around how to responsibly use AI. It's the same thing that we've done with social media. So social media is another area that students use. They utilize it a lot. It has taken over very much our society today, especially with young people. And so that responsible use of AI and being on the internet, that digital citizenship is one of the important foundations of what we do with our students. And so that we have an advisory program. So that our advisory meets once a month. So essentially that's a 35-minute, 40-minute period that our students meet with a teacher in small groups. And those teachers go over lessons that are academic in nature, but more academic adjacent. They're more focused on character or safety, or in this case, responsible use of AI and making sure that we have an academic integrity in what we do. Our teachers also, in any type of assignment and in their syllabus, they've added language in there. So we have a AI kind of academic integrity language that that has been sent out to all of our parents as well as sent out to all of our students. So it kind of outlines for the students like what's the responsible use. It goes through that stoplight system and really tells them like this is where that line you would cross that line into cheating, and versus using it to really go to that application level of what you're being asked to do in that particular assignment.
So I think setting those clear expectations, even with students, I think has proven a little helpful. Yeah,
Yes,
perfect.
clear expectations, and then the follow through when the students don't meet those expectations, because that happens, and that
Yeah,
happens with or without AI.
yeah.
So it's really ensuring that that follow through is there. We're having those conversations with students and really kind of guiding them down the path of academic integrity.
That is incredible. Okay, so moving on to my next question. You helped design Canyon View High School with flexible and architecture and career pathways. So, if you were designing a high school today with AI in mind from day one, what would you do differently?
There's not a lot that I would do differently, but one thing that I would do differently is how does the technology in our learning spaces, both the individual learning labs, classrooms, and as well as shared spaces,
Mm,
how do we ensure that there is technology that can support what's coming forward? That would be one of the things that I would really take a look at, as well as um, how do I support teachers in being able to work collaboratively with AI in mind? And so how do I support, so that would be one of the things that I would think of as well. But there's not, I think one of the things that we did in designing and building Canyon View High School is to make it flexible and make it adaptable to
Hmm.
what's happening in the future,
Hmm.
because education changes 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and we don't even know some of the jobs or careers that are going to be available to individuals, down the road. And so I think we did a really good job of doing that at Canyon View High School. But there's some technology that obviously in 2018, 17, 18 didn't exist that does today. And so I would keep that in mind in developing any high school today.
That's pretty great. Okay, so here's a futuristic sort of a question. Looking ahead 5 years, what will separate districts that thrive in AI era from those who still fall behind a little?
I think the biggest separation is going to be the skill set gap that's going to be created for
Mhm.
not only students, but for teachers as well. Um, you're going to have those districts that are embracing it, those districts that are moving forward and understanding how this is going to improve workflows, not just on the teaching side, but on the operational side as well. You're going to see efficiencies that change as a result, and those districts are going to save money. They're going to save time. They're going to utilize staff in a greater way. And then also, you're going to see that there's a skill set that teachers and the students have. So, those students going into the workplace from those districts are going to be able to go into jobs and get positions that other districts students are going to be just a step behind, because they're going to walk in that room and automatically they're going to have a head start, because they're going to be able to say, I have this particular skill set in AI, in automation, that another student may not be able to. So I definitely think that's what's going to separate districts who thrive in the AI area versus those who are resistant to the change that's coming.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Okay, so the last question from my end. If someone were to step into your role tomorrow and inherit your AI strategy, what was that one principle that you would want them to keep in mind?
The one thing I would say is you have to continue to move forward,
Mm.
and you have to continue to involve all staff in a shared vision of what AI looks like, and ensuring that that workflow is embedded on both the academic side and the operational side.
Mm.
I think it's critical that not just one group of the organization is learning about AI or is involved in AI, but you've got to make sure that there's a fair understanding, not just with your students and your teachers, but also with your administrators, your classified staff, and then your operational staff. It's that's the critical principle that I would say you have to keep.
That's pretty incredible. Okay, so we have this segment where we have the previous leader that we've done a podcast with share a question for the next leader. So the question that has come up for you is that if there are ever failures or if there is something that you perceive to be a failure, how do you cope with that perceived failure?
Right. So how do I cope with failure or the perceived failure?
Mhm.
Right. I think for me, for my personality, the I'm very reflective of my practices. I try to be reflective every day, because nobody's perfect. You're going to make mistakes every day. Doesn't matter how good of a leader you are. That's just a part of the job, because you're making so many decisions. Some of those decisions are going to be great. Some of those decisions are going to be mediocre, and some of those decisions are going to be bad decisions, which maybe lead to failure. And what I try to approach failure is a failure to me is not a it's not the end of whatever that path is in that particular project, that initiative. It is an opportunity to learn and reflect upon what went well and what didn't go well. And usually there's at least something that went well. And then when you're looking at the things that didn't go well or those perceived failures, my next steps are is to really dig into those areas, and then how can I rethink or reimagine, so that the next time I learn from that, and so that we're going to make some different decisions or make some slight modifications to whatever it is, in order to really be reflective of our previous practices, and then employ those best practices and strategies of improvement later on down the road.
That is such a wonderful answer to this question. And yeah, just thank you so much for taking out the time to do this with us today and sharing so many insights about AI and how to integrate that into schools. So yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you.